first, I went to school in Philadelphia college, and in 1979, when I started, there was a good friend of mine who we were both in the business school there, and he said, if you're really interested in business, there's this guy Warren Buffett who you just should read anything that he writes. I had never heard of Warren Buffett in 1979, but I respected this guy, and I started reading this stuff, and I was like, wow, there's tremendous clarity to what he says, and it makes sense. And between taking the corporate finance classes and accounting and all that, you had this that was kind of practical applied experience. So here's a guy who really was a hero of mine from, an investing standpoint.
From back when you were in college.
Yeah, from 1979.
Yeah.
So I'm reading all this stuff. And then I experienced, some decent success in investing, and my fund had a good track record. And I knew that Warren did this auction, and it benefits Glide Foundation in San Francisco, wonderful charity. Sure. And I happened to be a chair of a trust that met twice a year, once in San Francisco and once in Shanghai every year. And it gave me a good reason to kind of travel the world and get to know some folks. But I wanted to understand more about Glide before I did anything that was a big ticket that I was going to write if I was going to do something like this. And so I was out at a trust meeting, and my assistant had reminded me that I wanted to visit the people at Glide and understand the thing. And she set the thing up. I finished my trust work. I spent half a day with the folks at Glide, and it just happened to be the last day of the auction that year. So it was going on while I was there. And I went they invited me down to the closing thing. They didn't know I was registered to bid on it. And, I actually ended up winning the thing, and it was like, wow, this is something. And it really, after I had spent half a day with the folks at Glide, just again, great operation there. So that was terrific.
What is the organization?
What's that?
Glide organization?
Yeah, Glide. They give hope to the otherwise hopeless. It's a wonderful organization, hundreds of volunteers that run both a soup kitchen and a healthcare clinic in the toughest part of San Francisco, and it's known to everybody in the city, very efficiently run, and touches a lot of lives. And Warren's wife Susie had been very active in the thing, and so that was where the interest came from. Yeah, but I ended up winning this thing, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But I'm back at my office, and I get this phone call on a Tuesday morning, and I pick up my phone, and it's Warren on the other end, and it's like, oh, geez, this is something. This is his hero. Yeah, and yeah, it was. He was terrific, and I had said the one thing that I wanted. I had wanted it to be anonymous, and I want my name attached to it, and I also wanted to do it in Omaha instead of New York. It was set up to be a New York lunch at Smith & Wollensky's, a great steakhouse in New York.
So very public.
And yeah, and he said that's fine. And then he said, when would you like to do it? And I was, well, your schedule will dictate, Mr. Buffett. And he said, and he really was unbelievable, because then he says, well, I could do tomorrow night, I could do Wednesday, I could do Thursday, and he rattles off 4 days in a row. And I'm like, And I think I picked the day 2 days later. And so I flew out to Omaha, and I met him in his office, and it clicked. It really clicked. And it was kind of interesting, because I think there's a bookends to my career. My first job at W.R. Grace, I was an analyst, and then I happened to have a job as the aide to the CEO there, who was a guy by the name of Peter Grace. And Peter and I had a great relationship, but I viewed him more as almost a monarch than a CEO. And he had all the trappings of being the high and mighty CEO of a Fortune 50 company. And he had to go through 6 doors to get to his office, and everything was maximum intimidation and all the rest of that.
I see.
And then Warren's just like, I show up at headquarters, and he bounces out in the hallway and says, great to meet you, Ted. Come on in, grab a seat on the couch, and immediately put me at ease. And it was just great. We visited at the office for maybe 45 minutes, an hour. There were a number of connections. He'd actually met Peter Grace a couple of times, so we had some Peter Grace stories that we connected over. And then we ended up having like a 3-hour dinner at Piccolo's, and it really clicked. Then I actually bid on it the following year and won it again for $1 more. And this time I had a little bit more time to think about questions. And
how did you?
like,
That's the first time because you only have a few days. You didn't expect to win.
Yeah.
How do you plan questions for Warren Buffett?
Really? Yeah. You know, my mind was kind of racing, but again, he's got this wonderful way of putting you at ease. You know, and it was just conversational, and I had a lot of questions about, you know, investing and, you know, lessons learned and, you know, philanthropic dispositions, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of natural topics that came out. I wish I would have had more time to buff and polish, but that's okay.
Right.
You know, but lo and behold, but another year later, you know, and I've got it again. And then that one I did have a few weeks to think about, and I put together a legal pad of, you know, dozens and dozens of things that I wanted to hit on. And we did the same deal. We went to Piccolo's, and it was terrific. But I had probably 3 pages of questions. And toward the end of the dinner, I said, geez, I think I've hit everything just naturally off of my checklist, but I just want to look at my notes. Do you mind? And you can ask me anything if you want, Warren. And he, as I'm looking down at my notes, checking stuff off, he says, "Yeah, I think you'd be a pretty good fit out here. Do you have any interest in working at Berkshire?" I absolutely panicked. You know, this was like this was absolutely not what I was thinking.
So it didn't come up the first year.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. And my immediate reaction was, "There's no way this works." You know, I got this good gig back in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm running a $2 billion fund. It's just, you know, me and 2 other people, and but you can't just dismiss it. I mean, this is your hero. And so I was like, wow, that's not what I expected, but thank you. And I got to think about that. So he drives me to the airport right after dinner and drops me off, and he gets out. We both get out, and he says, "Yeah, that thing I mentioned at dinner."
In case you forgot.
Yeah. He said, "You don't have to decide now, but I mean, if you feel it in like 2, 3, 5 years, you know, just let me know." And I'm like, wow, you know, at the time he had just turned 80, and I'm like, that's really something to have that. And I really was still like, there's no way, this just does not make sense. And I got back to Charlottesville, and I gave a lot of thought to it, and I sent him a note that basically said, it just doesn't work because my kids at the time were in grade school, and my and you know, my family, had roots in Charlottesville, and I was running a large bankruptcy actually for W.R. Grace. It was one of my investments in Peninsula, and it was a bankruptcy that I worked on for 10 years, and and so I said, I really need to see this through. There's probably another 3 years. And so I sent him a carefully worded letter, sent it off. And, you know, within an hour, I've got this response from him. That's you know, email letter on his letterhead that says, you know, thanks for the note. And it was something to the effect of, you know, you can manage money from the moon as far as I'm concerned, so you can stay in Charlottesville. And I like the fact that you want to finish up this bankruptcy. You can do that, you know, on our watch. You know, that's not a problem. So like, oh, yeah. So it's like, oh, and then I started thinking more and more, and you know, and a day later he sent me a proposal that kind of laid out how the mechanics would work and all the rest. And then I thought, you know, I'd been doing this fund at Peninsula for 12 years, and once in a while you just want to scrape the plate clean and do something new. And so I decided, yeah, that'll work. And the only thing I asked was that, you know, I wanted to commit that I would come out to Omaha 2 days a week and, you know, be part of the team in Omaha. So I'd commute from Charlottesville, but Charlottesville would still be my home. And it's worked out beautifully. So I've been doing that for, you know, a little over 10 years now.
So you come out 2 days a week?
Yeah.
And you
2, 3 sometimes, yeah.
Place here?
Yeah, I've got a condo in Midtown Crossings that's fully outfitted by NFL. Yeah, absolutely. Every piece. Right? It's beautiful. It was perfect.